They called her useless, an embarrassment, a woman who peaked in high school and then spent her prime years as a decorative, quiet wife, only to be discarded for a newer, shinier model. To her ex-husband, Julian Sterling, she was nothing more than a pretty, empty-headed burden he was finally glad to be rid of. He and his new fiancée laughed about her little job at a local gallery, but they never wondered why she was so quiet or why she never asked for a penny in the divorce. They were about to find out at the one event where reputations are made and destroyed. The aroma of burnt espresso and judgment hung heavy in the air. Eliza adjusted the simple, dove-grey sleeve of her blouse, her gaze fixed on a framed lithograph she didn't truly see. She worked at the Seraphine Gallery, a quiet, elegant space in a revitalized downtown district that specialized in contemporary realism. It was a job she had sought for its anonymity. It was, she often thought, the perfect place to be invisible. That anonymity was shattered the moment Beatrice Sterling, her former mother-in-law, swept into the cafe next door where Eliza was grabbing her lunch. Flanking her was Victoria Thorne, the woman who had replaced her. Victoria was all sharp angles, platinum hair, and the blinding glint of a 10-carat diamond that Eliza knew Julian couldn't really afford. Not yet. "Oh, Eliza," Beatrice boomed, her voice dripping with the kind of saccharine pity that stings more than venom. "Fancy seeing you here. Still, working, are we?" Victoria, sipping an iced beverage that looked complicated and expensive, let her eyes drift over Eliza's simple linen trousers and flats. A tiny, perfect smirk played on her lips. "Beatrice, darling, be nice. It's commendable that she's trying to, contribute. After all that time was the decade Eliza had spent as Julian Sterling's wife. A decade of hosting his immaculate dinner parties, of smoothing over his abrasive personality with clients, of managing 2 households while he built his empire. An empire that, she knew, was still more facade than substance. "It's a lovely gallery, Beatrice," Eliza said, her voice even. She had perfected the art of the placid exterior. "You should stop by." Beatrice let out a tinkling, insincere laugh. "Oh, darling, I don't think we have the time. Julian is just so busy. He's on the cusp of something monumental. A deal that will finally put Sterling Innovations on the map in a way you could never have understood." "The Vance Holdings partnership," Victoria supplied, unable to stop herself from preening. "You've probably never heard of them. They're dreadfully private. But Julian, he always gets what he wants." Eliza's hand, resting on her tote bag, clenched slightly. Vance Holdings. The name was a phantom limb, an ache she had lived with her entire life. "That's wonderful for him," Eliza said, her voice a perfect, neutral monotone. She rose from her small table. "Please excuse me, I have to get back." "Of course, dear," Beatrice said, waving her away. As Eliza turned, she heard Victoria whisper, not quite quietly enough. God, can you imagine? Going from Julian's world back to that? She looked so used up. It's pathetic. He really did carry her for years. She's utterly useless without him. Eliza walked out of the cafe, her back straight. The word useless echoed in her ears. It was the word Julian had used in their final, brutal argument. "You contribute nothing, Eliza. You have no ambition, no drive. You're a leech, a beautifully useless ornament. I'm done. She had let him believe it. She had, in fact, encouraged him to believe it. She had walked away from their marriage, from the sterile, minimalist penthouse he adored, with nothing but a single suitcase and her maiden name. A name she kept buried, a secret held so close it had nearly suffocated her. She had left one gilded cage, she thought, unlocking the gallery door. But the bars, it seemed, had a way of following her. She just wished they weren't so convinced of her irrelevance. It was, ironically, the one thing that still gave her power. Julian, Beatrice, and Victoria saw her as a ghost, a non-entity. They had no idea that ghosts, in their own way, held all the cards. They couldn't hurt you, but they could certainly haunt you. And soon, she suspected, her haunting was about to begin. Julian Sterling paced his office, a glass-walled box on the 45th floor that overlooked the city. The office, like his life, was a curated masterpiece of cold, modern design. A single dramatic orchid sat on a desk of brushed steel. There were no photos, no clutter, just a phone, a sleek monitor, and the hum of his own relentless ambition. "They're stalling, Gregory," Julian snapped, yanking at the knot of his silk tie. "We've sent the proposal 3 times. 3. And all we get back is a form email from some paralegal at Vance Holdings. Do they even know who we are?" Gregory, his partner, and the coding genius behind their tech, ran a hand through his already frazzled hair. "They're Vance Holdings, Julian. They're the they. They're a $200 billion private equity hydra. They don't need to know who we are. We need them to know." "And they will," Julian said, his voice dropping to a low, confident growl. He stared at his own reflection in the window. He was handsome in a severe, cut jawline way. He'd willed himself into this success. He'd cut every tie that didn't pull him upward. That included Eliza. "Thank God I cut the dead weight when I did," he mused aloud. Gregory looked up, uncomfortable. "Julian, don't." "No, I'm serious," Julian pressed, turning. "Victoria gets it. She understands the image. She's a partner in this. Eliza. My God. She just wanted to, I don't know, read books and visit museums. She thought ambition was a dirty word. She would have held me back from this, Gregory. She would have said it was too aggressive or not authentic. She was useless." Gregory, who had always liked Eliza, said nothing. He remembered Eliza as the one who brought soup to the office during their first all-night coding session, the one who remembered his kid's birthday. But he also knew Julian's drive was what paid the bills. "This Vance deal," Julian continued, "is everything. Their infrastructure, their global network. They plug into our system, and Sterling Innovations becomes a global standard. It's not about the money, Greg. It's about the legacy." This was a lie, and they both knew it. It was entirely about the money and the status that came with it. "So," Gregory said, "what's the new plan? Because the old plan of sending emails isn't working." Julian smiled, a predator's smile. "The new plan is Victoria. She's a shark. She found an inn. The annual Heart's Hope charity gala. It's the most exclusive philanthropic event of the year. You can't buy a ticket. You have to be invited, or be a major donor." "And we're not," Gregory stated flatly. "No, but Victoria's family foundation bought a table for an obscene amount of money. We're going. And more importantly, we know who else is going. He tapped his monitor. A file opened, showing a blurry, decades-old photograph of a man with severe, piercing eyes. Arthur Vance, Julian breathed. The man himself. He's a recluse. Hasn't been photographed in public since the 90s, but he's the chief patron of the Heart's Hope Children's Wing. He always attends, even if he stays in his private suite. If I can get 5 minutes, just 5 minutes in a room with him, I can close this. And if you can't? I will, Julian said. Victoria is already planning her assault. She's networking, finding out who his gatekeepers are, what his interests are. She's securing our future, unlike Eliza, who couldn't even be bothered to balance a checkbook. He glanced at his phone. A text from Victoria. Got the seating chart. We're nowhere near him, but I have a plan. Wear the Tom Ford tux. We need to look like we already own the world. He smiled. Yes, he said to the empty room. We do? He had shed his useless past, and he was rocketing toward a future where no one could ever question his power again. He was an architect, and he was building a skyscraper on the ashes of his first, failed marriage. Eliza sat in the small, cluttered back office of the Seraphine Gallery. In front of her was a detailed spreadsheet of the gallery's inventory, its overhead, and its, to be frank, disappointing profit and loss statement. Her boss, a kind but flustered woman named Mrs. Delacourt, believed Eliza was just good with numbers and had tasked her with finding a way to make the upcoming auction profitable. In reality, Eliza was performing due diligence. Her phone, a simple, nondescript model, vibrated on the desk. The screen lit up with a single, unchangeable ID. Father. She stared at it. For a long moment, she considered letting it go to voicemail. She had, in the past, let it ring for days. But today, after the encounter with Beatrice and Victoria, the simple, burning word, useless, made her thumb press the accept button. You called, she said, her voice flat. A deep, gravelly voice, accustomed to moving markets and toppling governments, answered. It was, as always, devoid of preamble. Elizabeth, your sabbatical has lasted 5 years and 3 months. You are still evaluating that minor canvas cellar? It's an art gallery, Father, and it's a potential acquisition for the Foundation's Arts Incubator program. Due diligence is what you taught me. A dry huff. I taught you to assess a billion-dollar merger in an afternoon, not to count paintbrushes. This is a hobby. It's a life, Eliza said softly, but with a spine of steel he knew well. It's the one I chose, the one away from Vance Holdings, away from the name. You wanted to be normal, he finished, the word laced with disdain. You wanted to be loved for your true self. How did that experiment work out, Elizabeth? You married a charlatan, a self-important peacock who didn't love you. He loved the idea of a docile, aimless wife, a convenient, pretty blank slate. You were right to leave him. You were weak to stay so long. Eliza closed her eyes. It was the same argument they'd had for years. She had run from his gilded cage, desperate to prove she wasn't just Arthur Vance's daughter, and had flown directly into Julian's. Julian, who saw her quiet nature not as strength, but as emptiness. He had projected onto her the useless tag because it made him feel powerful. Why did you call, Father? The Heart's Hope Gala. he said, switching topics instantly. You will be attending. Eliza's blood ran cold. Absolutely not. I'm not Elizabeth Vance. I'm Eliza. I'm just Eliza. I can't go to that. You can and you will, he commanded. Not as my daughter. As yourself. Mrs. Delacourte's gallery is, as you know, a beneficiary of the foundation. They are donating a piece for the auction. You will go as the gallery's representative. You will stand with the art. You will observe. Observe what? You, from a distance? I am observing you, Elizabeth. And I am observing a potential investment. A small, obnoxious tech firm called Sterling Innovations. Their CEO is overly aggressive. Vapid. But the tech has potential. They have been bombarding my office for weeks. Eliza's stomach twisted into a knot. Sterling Innovations, Julian's company. There was a long, heavy silence. When Arthur Vance spoke again, his voice was a different, more dangerous kind of cold. Your ex-husband. Yes. I see. This complicates matters. I don't see why, Eliza said, her voice hardening. My personal life has nothing to do with your business. It never has. Don't be a fool, child, he snapped. Everything is business, and this is now interesting. This Julian Sterling. He doesn't know, does he? He has no idea, Eliza said. To him, I'm the useless, dependent wife he graciously cut loose. He thinks I came from a modest, middle-class family that's long gone. Another pause, this one filled with a chilling, calculating energy. Good, Arthur Vance said. Then your attendance at the gala is no longer a request. It is a necessity. You will be my eyes and ears. I want to see how this peacock struts when he doesn't know the lion is in the room. I want to know the character of the man asking for my money, and you are going to show me. I am not a prop in one of your games, she shot back. No, he agreed, his voice softening just a fraction. You are not. You are my daughter. And it is long past time you remembered what that means. It doesn't mean hiding in a dusty shop. It means you hold the power. It means you are never useless. The line clicked dead. Eliza sat in the silence of the back office, the P&L statement forgotten. Her father was wrong. He thought she was hiding. But she wasn't. She was waiting. She had been in the shadows for so long, she wasn't sure she remembered how to step into the light. But now, it seemed, the light was coming to find her. Julian, Victoria, and her father, all converging on one night. It wasn't a party, it was a collision course. The week leading up to the Heart's Hope Gala was a special kind of hell for Julian. His desperation was a tangible thing, a metallic taste in his mouth. Every attempt to breach the walls of Vance Holdings had failed. His calls were routed to an assistant's assistant. His emails were met with automated replies. His carefully curated proposal, the one detailing the revolutionary synergy of their platforms, was met with deafening silence. This is impossible, he roared, slamming his phone down on his desk. The orchid petals shivered. It's like the man doesn't exist. He's a ghost. He exists, Victoria said, not looking up from her tablet. She was seated on his minimalist leather sofa, her legs crossed. She was vetting designer gowns. And you're going about this all wrong, Julian. You're acting thirsty. These people like Arthur Vance, they can smell desperation. It's like... She wrinkled her nose. Like cheap cologne. So what do you suggest, Victoria? We just hope he wanders over to our table at the gala? No, she said, finally looking up. Her eyes were bright and hard. We create an event, a moment. I've been doing my homework. Vance doesn't just give to this charity. His late wife, Elara Vance, founded it. This gala. It's his one, personal vulnerability. He doesn't care about tech. He cares about this. So, we make a donation? Julian said, confused. Ugh, no, she scoffed. He's a billionaire. Our donation would be a rounding error. No, we have to show that we share his values. The auction. That's the key. The art auction? Yes. It's the centerpiece of the evening. They auction off 5 or 6 major pieces. The rumor is Vance himself quietly bids on one every year, through a proxy, for his private collection. That's our in. We're going to bid on the same piece he's bidding on. Julian stared at her. Are you insane? We can't afford to get into a bidding war with Arthur Vance. We don't have to win, Julian. We just have to bid. We drive the price up. We show we're in the same league. We're passionate about the art, passionate about the charity. We're not just tech drones. We're philanthropists. We're peers. Then, after we graciously lose the bid to him, you go up to his proxy, congratulate them and say, Mr. Vance has excellent taste. I'd love to discuss his taste in technology as well. It's brilliant. Julian let the plan settle in his mind. It was brilliant. It was audacious, public, and it positioned them exactly as he wanted to be seen. Victoria, you are a genius. She smiled. I know. Now, the main piece this year is apparently from some small, local place called the Seraphine Gallery. Some dreadful contemporary thing. We'll need to look it up, pretend to be experts on the artist. Seraphine Gallery. Julian's mind churned. The name was familiar. Wait, that's... My God, that's where Eliza works. Victoria's smile vanished. What? That's her little job. The gallery. Victoria was silent for a moment, her mind racing. Then a slow, malicious smile spread across her face. Oh, that's not a problem. That's a bonus. How? Don't you see? She'll be there, working, probably fetching champagne or standing by the painting like a little museum guard. Julian, this is perfect. It's the ultimate power move. We'll be bidding tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, on a painting from the very shop where your useless ex-wife works. The contrast, the symbolism, it's poetic. Julian pictured it. Him in his Tom Ford tux, paddle in the air, a titan of industry, and across the room, Eliza, in her drab little work uniform, watching him conquer the world she had abandoned, watching him with the new, superior woman who understood his greatness. The desperation in his gut was replaced by a hot, thrilling surge of power. It is poetic, he agreed, his voice low. The facade of his stress and anxiety didn't just crumble, he tore it down. He was no longer a desperate man trying to get a meeting. He was a king, about to claim his throne, and the entire world, including his pathetic ex-wife, was about to watch. The ballroom at Cipriani Wall Street was a staggering sea of opulence. Vaulted ceilings soared into the darkness, Greek columns stood like sentinels, and the air shimmered with the light of 1,000 diamonds and the sound of cultivated, powerful laughter. This was not a party. It was a display of a very specific, very insulated stratum of human existence. Julian felt like he was breathing rarefied air. His Tom Ford tux fit like a second skin. Victoria, on his arm, was a vision in a blood-red Givenchy gown, her diamonds flashing like weapons. They had arrived. "Right," Victoria murmured, her eyes scanning the room. "Table 42. It's in the back, but that's fine. We're not here to sit. We're here to hunt. The auction starts in 30 minutes. As they navigated the tables, Julian scanned the room, not for Arthur Vance, but for Eliza. He spotted her almost immediately. She was standing, as Victoria had predicted, by the art display. The centerpiece was a large, dramatic canvas of abstract, swirling colors. Eliza was not in a drab uniform. She was wearing a simple, floor-length gown of the deepest midnight blue. It had no jewels, no sequins. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, elegant chignon. She wore no jewelry save for a pair of simple pearl earrings. And yet, she was drawing looks. There was a stillness to her, a self-possession that was new. She wasn't a flustered gallery assistant. She looked, Julian thought with a pang of annoyance, like she belonged there. "There she is," Victoria hissed, noticing his gaze. "God, she even looks boring. Look at her, just standing there, like a piece of the furniture." "Let's go say hello," Julian said, a cruel smile touching his lips. He needed to re-establish the narrative in his own head. He needed to see her flinch. They cut a path directly toward her. Eliza saw them coming. Her face remained perfectly neutral. "Eliza, dear," Julian said, his voice booming slightly, drawing the attention of a few people nearby. "I am just stunned to see you here. I didn't realize the help was allowed to mingle before the main event." Eliza looked at him. Her eyes were clear, and for the first time, he realized they weren't brown, but a deep, dark green. "Julian, Victoria." The gallery was invited to present the auction's feature piece. I'm the gallery's representative. "The representative?" "Oh, that's a lovely way to put it," Victoria chimed in, laughing as if Eliza had told a delightful joke. "Well, you and the painting, you both look very well staged." She ran a hand down the fabric of Julian's suit jacket. "My Julian is just so excited for this auction. We're planning to bid on this very painting. A little memento of the night. A night where he's closing the biggest deal of his life." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. "He's in talks with Vance Holdings, you know. He's finally free of all his past failures. He's about to be a legend, and you're here, selling paintings. It's adorable." Eliza's gaze didn't waver. It simply shifted from Victoria to Julian. "Is that what you're doing, Julian? Closing a big deal?" "The biggest of my life," he confirmed, puffing his chest slightly. "It's a little complex. You wouldn't understand the financials. But let's just say that by tomorrow, the world is going to look very different." "I have no doubt," Eliza said, her voice soft. "The world can change in an instant." "Julian, darling, look." Victoria suddenly gasped, grabbing his arm. "That's Mrs. Astor, the head of the committee, and, oh my God, there's a man with her. He's..." Julian turned. A small entourage was moving from a private alcove toward the stage. At its center was a woman in her 70s, but the man beside her. He was older, with a shock of white hair and the most piercing, intelligent eyes Julian had ever seen. He moved with an authority that made everyone else in the room seem like a child. That's him, Julian whispered, his heart hammering. That's Arthur Vance. He's here, Victoria breathed, her fingers digging into his arm. He's out here. This is our chance. He's going to the stage, Julian said, his mind racing. The auction. Our plan. It's perfect. He'll be watching as we bid. Julian gave Eliza one last, triumphant smirk. You should watch this, Eliza. This is how real success is made. Not by standing in the shadows, but by taking what you want, right out in the open. I will, Eliza said, her eyes never leaving the stage. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Julian took Victoria's arm, and they moved to their table, their hearts pounding with the thrill of the hunt. They were so focused on the stage, on the man walking toward it, that they failed to notice the small, almost imperceptible nod Arthur Vance gave, as his eyes swept the room. A nod that was aimed directly at the useless woman in the simple blue dress, standing by the art. The auctioneer, a charismatic man with a rapid-fire delivery, had just sold a week on a private island for an astonishing sum. The room was buzzing, champagne-fueled and generous. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer boomed, our final and most significant item of the evening, a stunning piece by the visionary artist Caelan Locke, generously donated by the Seraphine Gallery. Andromeda's Echo. We will start the bidding at $50,000. This is it, Julian whispered to Victoria. He raised his paddle. 50,000. We have 50,000, the auctioneer called. Do I hear 75? A paddle went up in the corner. 75,000. 100, Julian shot back, his voice firm. He felt powerful. He glanced at Arthur Vance, who was seated in the front row, watching the stage with a placid expression. 100,000. Do I hear 125? The paddle in the corner. 125. 150, Julian declared. This is getting expensive, Victoria hissed, her smile tightening. It's an investment, Julian replied. The paddle in the corner immediately went up. 175. 200, Julian said, his jaw tight. The room was quiet now. This was a real battle. We have $200,000 from Mr. Sterling, the auctioneer announced. Going once. Going twice. 250,000. The voice came from the front row. It was quiet, amplified by a microphone held by an assistant. Arthur Vance had not raised a paddle. He had simply spoken. The room erupted in applause. Julian's heart sank, but he quickly recalibrated. This was the plan. This was better than the plan. What a gesture, the auctioneer cried. Sold to Mr. Arthur Vance. As the applause died down, Mrs. Astor, the committee head, stepped to the microphone. Thank you, Arthur. Your generosity, as always, is the bedrock of our foundation. She consulted her notes. And now, a special word of thanks. We are not only grateful for this final, magnificent bid, but also to the curator who sourced this piece and who has personally overseen the Foundation's new Elara Vance Children's Wing art program for the past year. Julian and Victoria clapped politely, already scheming about how to intercept Vance as he left. This woman, Mrs. Astor continued, her voice warm, has worked tirelessly, and she has done so in perfect anonymity, as was her wish. But tonight, we insisted, please join me in thanking the head of our acquisitions committee, and the true heart behind our new wing, Miss Elizabeth Vance. The spotlight didn't move to the stage. It swiveled, sweeping across the room, and landed directly on Eliza. She was standing, as she had been all night, by the painting. She looked, for a second, caught. Then, she simply inclined her head, a graceful, royal acknowledgement. The ballroom was utterly silent. You could hear a diamond drop. Julian's blood had not just run cold, it had frozen in his veins. He stared, his mouth hanging open. "Elizabeth Vance?" he whispered. It was impossible. It was a joke. Victoria's face had gone a chalky, skeletal white. Her perfectly painted red mouth was a small O of horror. "No," Julian said, standing up. "No, that's Eliza Sterling, my ex-wife. She works at the gallery. She's useless." His voice, in the silent room, was tragically loud. Every head turned toward him. And then every head turned back to the stage as Arthur Vance stood and took the microphone from Mrs. Astor. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked directly at Julian. His voice was not the gravelly phone call voice. It was a clear, cold, arctic blade of a voice that cut through the entire, vast room. "Mr. Sterling, isn't it? Of Sterling Innovations." Julian felt his legs might buckle. Mr. Vance, there's been a mistake. The only mistake," Arthur Vance said, "was yours. You're right about one thing. That is indeed your ex-wife." He walked off the stage, across the floor, and stopped directly in front of Eliza. He put a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of profound, unshakable ownership and pride. "What you and the rest of the world failed to realize," Vance continued, his voice resonating with cold fury, "is that she is also my daughter, the sole heir to Vance Holdings, the useless woman you discarded." Victoria made a small, strangled sound, like a dying bird. The art program," Julian stammered. "The little job. Her little job," Eliza said, and her voice, though quiet, was now the only sound in the universe. "Was managing a $50 million philanthropic fund for the children's wing, the Seraphine Gallery. I was finalizing its acquisition. My father's foundation is turning it into a non-profit incubator for young artists. My hobby, as you called it." She looked at him, and for the first time, he didn't see the quiet, mousy woman. He saw the cold, brilliant intelligence of her father. He saw a lioness. "You said I wouldn't understand the financials of your deal," she said. "My proposal," Arthur Vance cut in, "was forwarded to her, as are all proposals related to our tech and media divisions. She is the head of that division." "I read your proposal last night, Julian," Eliza said. "The one you sent 3 times. It's reckless and arrogant. Those were my exact notes. You over-leveraged your company to acquire the new patents. Your entire infrastructure is a house of cards. You're not innovative. You're just desperate." She used his own word against him. Desperate. "As for your bid tonight," Arthur Vance said, with a dismissive wave, "it was a pathetic and transparent display. My daughter and I," he gestured to the painting, "bought that piece this afternoon. Your little bidding war was with my proxy, who was under instructions to let you win if you'd been stupid enough to go over 250k. We wanted to see how far you'd go to empty your pockets for a facade. Julian Sterling's world did not just crumble, it was detonated. He looked at Victoria, who was now 6 feet away from him, as if he were diseased. He looked at the faces of the investors, the power brokers, the society icons, all staring at him with a mixture of pity and contempt. He was a joke, a fool. Arthur Vance put his arm around Eliza's waist. My attorneys from Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, will be contacting your board first thing in the morning to discuss the inaccuracies in your proposal. As for your partnership, it's dead. Now, if you'll excuse us, my daughter and I have a gala to enjoy. They turned, and as one walked away, leaving Julian Sterling standing alone in the ruins of his ambition, finally understanding what it truly meant to be useless. The aftermath was not a quiet fallout. It was a corporate carpet bombing. The news of Julian Sterling's public humiliation at the Heart's Hope Gala spread through the financial world by morning. The phrase, reckless and arrogant, Eliza's exact words, was leaked by an anonymous board member from Vance Holdings and appeared in the Wall Street Journal by noon. Sterling Innovation stock, which was public, unlike the private Vance empire, didn't just fall. It plummeted off a cliff. Shareholders, realizing their CEO had not only failed to secure the deal of a lifetime, but had personally insulted the family that held the keys, filed a class action suit. Gregory, the partner Julian had so often dismissed, staged a boardroom coup, backed by the remaining investors. Julian was out. Ousted from his own company, his name stripped from the letterhead. Victoria Thorne was gone by sunrise. The engagement was called off via a text from her lawyer. The 10-carat diamond was left on the steel desk, its sparkle as cold and empty as the promises that had been made over it. Julian, it turned out, had financed the ring, the Maybach, and the penthouse on the expectation of the Vance deal. With that gone, he was more than broke. He was a cautionary tale. He was last seen by Beatrice, his mother, arguing with a barista at the same cafe where they had once mocked Eliza. He looked thin, grey, and utterly defeated. But this story was never really about Julian. It was about Eliza. She did not, as her father had hoped, take her seat at the head of the boardroom table at Vance Holdings. The day after the gala, she was not in a power suit. She was in jeans, at the Seraphine Gallery, overseeing its transition. When her father arrived, he found her not in the office, but on a ladder, helping a young, nervous artist hang a new piece. "Elizabeth," he said, his voice echoing in the emptying room. She looked down, a small smile on her face. "Father, come to count paintbrushes." He ignored the barb. "The Sterling board has accepted your terms. They're liquidating his assets. You were thorough." "I was fair," Eliza corrected. "I gave Gregory, the actual talent, a path to solvency. I just removed the reckless part." "So, you're done," he said. "It wasn't a question. Your desk is waiting. Your name is on the door. Elizabeth Vance, President of Global Acquisitions." Eliza slowly climbed down the ladder. She stood before him, her father, the man who was a legend, the man who had, in his own way, called her useless too for wanting a different life. No, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Arthur's eyes narrowed. No, I'm not coming back to the 60th floor. I'm not going to be Elizabeth Vance president. Not your way. What is this? He demanded. After we finally showed them. You showed them, Eliza said, but I need to show me. You taught me that everything is business. Julian taught me that love can be a brutal transaction. And I learned that I don't want to be in the business of useless, not labeling it, not feeling it. What are you saying? I'm saying, she said, gesturing to the gallery, that this is my division, the Vance Ilara Arts Foundation. Not as a hobby, not as a sabbatical, as its CEO. I will run it. I will make it the most powerful arts incubator in the world. I will find the talent no one else sees. I will leverage the Vance name, but I will do it my way. For them. She pointed to the young artist who was watching them with wide eyes. Arthur Vance looked at his daughter. He didn't see the quiet girl who had run away. He didn't see the broken wife who had come home. He saw for the first time an equal, a woman who had taken his power, her ex-husband's cruelty, and her own quiet strength, and forged it into something new. Something he hadn't planned for. Something better. Very well, Miss Vance, he said. The use of her name was a concession, a coronation. Your budget will be on your desk. I'll send you my proposal, Eliza replied, a small, knowing smile on her face. I'm sure you'll find it authentic. He left her there, in the gallery, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, illuminating the dust of the old life as it was swept away to make room for the new. Eliza, finally, was not a daughter. She was not an ex-wife. She was not useless. She was the architect. And she was, at last, building a world where she belonged. 6 months had passed since the night the name Eliza had died, and Elizabeth Vance had been reborn in fire and public humiliation. But the woman who stood in the center of the bustling, light-filled gallery was neither of those people. She was, at last, just Eliza. The Seraphine Gallery was unrecognizable. What had been a dusty, quiet, and slightly desperate space was now the flagship of the Vance Ilara Arts Foundation. The name, which Eliza had chosen, honored her late mother, the woman who had actually founded the Heart's Hope charity, the woman who had loved art with a passion that her father, Arthur, had only ever seen as a hobby. Tonight was the opening of the Foundation's first curated exhibition, New Horizons. It was not a stuffy gala. There were no $1,000-a-plate dinners. It was loud, vibrant, and packed with young artists, students, genuine collectors, and city council members. Wine flowed. A live string quartet played contemporary music, and the air buzzed with genuine excitement. Eliza, dressed in an elegant but practical wide-leg jumpsuit, moved through the crowd with an easy, quiet authority. Her former boss, Mrs. Delacourt, was now the Foundation's chief curator, her face flushed with a joy Eliza had never seen. "It's a triumph, Eliza," Mrs. Delacourt whispered, squeezing her arm. "Kaelin's new pieces are transcendent and selling. We've sold the 3 main sculptures already. He deserves it," Eliza smiled. Kaelin Locke, the artist whose Andromeda's Echo had been the centerpiece of the gala auction, was now the art world's new sensation. He was across the room, a tall, endearingly awkward man in a paint-splattered but expensive linen shirt, trying to explain his welding technique to a rapt critic from the New York Times. Eliza's little job had, in 6 months, become a powerhouse. Her first act as CEO had been to identify 5 more Kalins, brilliant artists on the verge of giving up. She didn't just give them a show, she gave them grants, studio space in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, and a healthcare plan. She was, as her father had gruffly noted, building a stable of assets. She called it nurturing potential. A large, imposing figure appeared at her elbow, and the noisy crowd seemed to part for him instinctively. "Father," Eliza said, turning, "I'm glad you came." Arthur Vance, in his usual immaculate bespoke suit, looked profoundly out of place. He was a shark in a koi pond, his sharp eyes scanning the room, the art, the people. He was not looking at the art, he was appraising it. "This is efficient," he finally said, his highest form of compliment. "I read the quarterly report. You've turned this gallery into a self-sustaining entity in 6 months. The New Horizons Fund has already tripled its initial seed money from corporate arts patrons, and this Kalin fellow's prices, they've quadrupled. You cornered the market on his entire early collection before you made him famous. A brilliant, predatory acquisition, Elizabeth." This was his language of love, the only one he truly knew. He saw her, finally, as a Vance. Eliza smiled, a small, knowing smile. "I'm glad the numbers please you, Father. But I just thought his work was beautiful, and when I met him, he was about to sell his welding tools to pay his rent. He was painting in an unheated garage. Now he has a studio, 2 apprentices, and his mother is getting the surgery she's needed for 5 years. That's the ROI I was focused on." Arthur was silent. He looked away from her, at a large, soaring sculpture of bronze and reclaimed glass. "Your mother, Elara, she would have liked this. This noise. This color." He paused, his voice dropping. "She always said I saw the price of everything and the value of nothing. It seems she managed to teach you the difference." It was the closest he would ever come to an apology. It was, for them, a breakthrough. "She did," Eliza said softly. "Will you stay? Kalin wants to thank you." "No," Arthur grunted, already turning. "I have a merger to kill in Zurich, but..." He looked back, his gaze uncharacteristically soft. "Well done, Miss Vance." He was gone. Eliza watched him go, feeling not the old, familiar ache of his disapproval, but a new, quiet sense of partnership. He was the shark, she was the architect, and somehow they had found a way to swim in the same ocean. Later that week, Eliza was in her new office, the old, cluttered back room, now remodeled with clean lines, natural wood, and a large window overlooking a small garden. She was reviewing grant proposals when a news alert popped up on her screen. She rarely clicked on society gossip, but the headline caught her eye. It was from a low-tier blog. The photo was grainy, taken at a nightclub opening. In it, Victoria Thorne was clinging to the arm of a balding, 60-something real estate developer. The caption was snide. "Some faces we haven't seen in a while. Victoria Thorne, once engaged to disgraced tech CEO Julian Sterling, was seen making a valiant effort to network at the opening of Vibe." An onlooker noted She seemed desperate to get into the VIP section. It's a hard fall from Givenchy at the Heart's Hope Gala. Eliza read on. The article mentioned that the Thorne Family Foundation, deeply embarrassed by the scandal and Victoria's appalling judgment, had quietly removed her from the board and significantly reduced her allowance. She was, the blog gleefully noted, no longer on the A-list. She was exactly what she had always feared, an ornament, slightly tarnished, being passed over for newer models. Eliza felt a familiar word echo. Thirsty. Victoria's own insult for Julian. How ironic. She didn't feel triumph. She didn't feel pity. She felt nothing. A faint, clinical disinterest. She closed the tab. Victoria's story, as far as she was concerned, was over. The same, however, could not be said for Julian. The encounter happened 2 days later. Eliza had ducked into the small cafe, the very one where Beatrice and Victoria had cornered her, to grab a coffee before a meeting. It was raining, a cold, miserable November afternoon. She was shaking out her umbrella when the bell on the door jingled behind her. A man, his shoulders slumped, walked in. He was wearing a thin, wrinkled suit jacket over a faded polo shirt. His hair was thinning, his face gaunt and grey. The arrogant, cut jawline severity was gone, replaced by a haunted, hollow-eyed desperation. He walked past her, toward the now hiring sign taped to the window. Eliza froze. It was Julian. He hadn't seen her. He approached the counter, and the young manager looked up. "Can I help you?" "Yes," Julian said, his voice a dry rasp. I'm here about the assistant manager position. I sent an application online." The manager looked down at a clipboard. "Julian. Sterling?" "Yes." "Right, you have tech experience, not a lot of food service." "I'm a fast learner," Julian said, his voice cracking. "I'm adaptable. I really need this job." Eliza's heart didn't pound. It just ached. A dull, sad ache for the profound, catastrophic waste of a human being. As he turned from the counter, waiting for the manager to get the owner, his eyes met hers. Time stopped. Julian's face went through a rapid, ugly series of contortions. First, disbelief. Then, a hot, dark flush of shame. Then, pure, unadulterated rage. And finally, beneath it all, a pathetic, desperate plea. He saw her, in her cashmere coat, her skin glowing, her entire presence radiating a quiet, unshakable success. He saw the woman he had thrown away. He took a shuffling step toward her. "Eliza." His voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, Julian," she said. Her voice was perfectly even. Not cold, not warm, just a fact. He stammered, looking around as if hoping no one was watching. I didn't know you still came here." "I like the coffee," she replied, just as she had all those months ago. "Eliza, please," he breathed, and the desperation in his eyes was terrible. "What you did, you didn't have to. You destroyed me. Everything. It's all gone. My company, my everything." Eliza looked at him. She didn't see the monster who had called her useless. She didn't see the husband she had once loved. She saw a weak man, a bully, who had finally been handed the consequences of his own actions. "No, Julian," she said, her voice still quiet, forcing him to lean in to hear it. "I didn't destroy you. You did. You were a house of cards long before I walked into that gala. You built your entire life on a lie. The lie that you were a self-made titan, and that everyone around you was either a tool to be used or a burden to be cut. She picked up her coffee cup from the counter. You built it, she said, on the lie that I was useless. You just finally had to face the architect. I'm sorry, he whispered. It was the desperate plea of a drowning man, not for forgiveness, but for a life raft. He wanted her to fix this. He wanted her to call her father, to make a call, to give him something. Eliza took a sip of her coffee. She shook her head, a small, final, melancholy movement. You're not sorry, Julian. You're just caught. There's a difference. Mr. Sterling, the manager called from the back office. Mr. Peterson will see you now. Julian's head snapped around. He looked at the manager, then back at Eliza, his face a mask of primal, agonizing humiliation. He had been dismissed. Not with a shout, not with a public scene. He had been dismissed as an interruption, a ghost. He turned, and without another word, shuffled to the back office for his interview. Eliza watched him go. She put a $5 bill on the counter and walked out into the rain. She didn't look back. That night, she was the last one to leave the gallery. The opening was a triumph, the artists were celebrating, and the foundation was already a success. She walked through the silent, beautiful rooms, the moonlight streaming in. She stopped in front of Andromeda's Echo, the painting from the gala. Her father had insisted it be moved here, on permanent loan. She stood before it, seeing the swirls of dark blue and explosive, hopeful light. The word useless echoed in her mind, one last time. It had been her prison. Her father's useless for not wanting his empire. Julian's useless for not being his accessory. But they were both wrong. Her quiet had been observation. Her stillness had been assessment. Her hobby had been her training. She was not an ornament. She was not a weapon. She was not defined by the name Sterling, or even the name Vance. She was Eliza, the architect, the one who saw potential in the paint, in the stone, and in the people everyone else had discarded. She turned off the gallery lights, the click of the switch definitive, and walked out into the vibrant, living city, finally, completely, and incandescently whole. And just like that, Eliza proved that the most powerful person in the room isn't the loudest or the richest. It's the one who knows their own worth. They called her useless because they couldn't use her. They saw her quiet as weakness, but it was the silence of a lion waiting. She didn't need Julian's world, and she didn't need her father's. She built her own. What did you think of Eliza's incredible moment of triumph? Have you ever felt underestimated, only to know you were holding a secret all along? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you loved Eliza's journey and want to hear more stories of karma, justice, and empowerment, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. We have so many more stories to tell.